and welcome to the Empowered Curiosity podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about reframing language and intention to dismantle shame. And I've got my lovely friend and colleague here, my good friend Nicolette, and she's a hypnotherapist. And after I got off the recording of this episode with Nicolette, I had a bit of a light bulb moment. And my light bulb moment, it's kind of funny, but I realized that I'm not that fun. And what I mean by that is that I spend my day contemplating shadows and wounded children and shame and vulnerability. And when someone works with me, it's not that easy because I'm not like a sunshine and rainbows kind of a coach. So, for example, I have a client in the beginning of a coaching relationship right now, and she came to me because she's going through a really heart-wrenching breakup. This is the third partner in 3 years, and when she's into a partner, she's so into her partner. And this breakup is bringing up all her attachment wounds, it's bringing up her painful triggers, and she's feeling like she's not enough. And I know that it's going to feel so good in the moment if I tell her, don't worry, the next one is going to see what a magical, sparkly, amazing creature you are, and really just hold her. I mean, like virtually hold her. I can't actually hold her because we're in physical isolation right now. But that's not actually true. And coddling her and telling her that she just needs to wait for that right person to show up and see her it's actually not that helpful. And it would be advising her to give her power away and continue looking for external validation, which is something that she's done her entire life. So, what I find is more empowering and transformative is to sit with her and say, wow, this fucking hurts so much. Let's look at this together. This sounds a lot like the last ex that you had, which also sounds like a lot of the family patterns that you've had. And I'm curious about when else these feelings of abandonment have come up for you. What do you do when you feel abandoned? Do you withdraw? Do you cling? What's your responsibility in this? And what's the common denominator here? So I know that these are harder truths to sit with, but sitting with the pain and the shadows without blaming or feeling the need to sink into shame or feeling like we have to fix it, this is the birthplace of transformation. To spark any sort of different pattern, we have to become more conscious of our existing patterns. So I guess this is a little bit of a warning for this community because we're going to have conversations on this podcast that are not fun. And this is one of them because sitting with your shadows is not easy. It's not easy to shed light on shame, and it's even harder to go actively digging through those layers looking for what feels shameful. But we're not meant to go through life feeling coddled. Protected and safe, yes, we are meant to go through life building up the tools and techniques that help us feel that way, but we are not meant to be coddled. We are meant to be challenged. We're meant to overcome and to keep overcoming. We are meant to soften in those places that we instinctively want to harden. Now, of course, there's going to be some lightness, but that lightness comes from curiosity. It comes from taking responsibility. It comes from looking at our shadows with compassion and forgiveness and kindness. And I have to admit, when I posted this, I shared this on my Instagram stories this week, and when I posted it, it was kind of tender for me to post because it highlighted several of my shame shadows. And, I've been hearing all my life and been feeling all my life that I am too much, I'm too sensitive, I'm too intense. But I have to say that the response I got was amazing. This Instagram post received the most DMs out of all the videos I've posted on Instagram so far. It took me sharing my shadows for you. And what I got reflected back from my community was that there is light in that cavern, because I got dozens of messages saying, hey, yeah, me too. I'm dark and intense and shadowy too. So if you listen to this podcast and you want to share that light, I hope that you'll take a moment to write a review on Apple Podcasts. Your voice will help others find their way to this community. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Nicolette. It's a hard one. So if you're feeling a little bit tender afterwards, that's okay. Give yourself some space to allow that feeling to be there and exist, and don't try to fix it. Welcome to the Empowered Curiosity podcast, and today I've got my dear friend Nicolette with us, and I'm just gonna give you a quick little bio intro. She wrote up a little intro about herself, but then I also want to share all the things that I love about her, and then we'll dive into this really lovely conversation I'm so excited about having. So Nicolette says that after many different career paths, including an 18-year run as a freelance broadcast producer, she found herself looking for better ways to use her skills to connect with and help people in more meaningful ways. She's been a clinical hypnotherapist since 2009, and she brings compassion, collaboration, and care, helping her clients discover their strengths, capabilities, and resources, honor their goals, and recognize that they have the freedom and power to change their mind. But I want to share a little story about how I met you and how you came into my life, and I'll just sort of set the stage. So about 3.5 years ago, I was thinking about moving to Vancouver to join AcuBalance, which is an acupuncture practice here in Vancouver. And I think people are often surprised when they hear that I'm an introvert, because I am so public on Instagram, and now I'm doing a podcast, but I am so introverted. And I think parties are like my worst nightmare. And I remember going to the AcuBalance Chinese New Year party and being thrown into a house with probably 50 other people who I don't know. And I don't know how we ended up hanging out on a couch together, but we, Nicolette, you and I just started hanging out, and I latched on to our conversation, and I don't think I talked to anybody else that night. It was I know I was supposed to be there networking and schmoozing and doing all that stuff, but I just remember having this amazingly deep conversation with a stranger and feeling so filled up, and really feeling there's I can actually come to Vancouver. There's somebody here I know, you know? And I think I've imprinted on you like a little baby duck. Been you're my friend now. But that is how we met, and you and I have been having these amazing conversations ever since then.
Yep.
And I'm so I honestly didn't prepare much for today's talk, because every time you and I have a conversation, I feel like I wish somebody was recording it, because I'm like, Nicolette said this really genius thing and I needed it down on paper. So yeah, that's my little...
I remember the meeting. I remember us meeting, and I'm an introvert too, actually. And so it was so lovely to meet. It felt like a kindred spirit, you know, and those conversations that we started having and have continued to have really been meaningful to me. And, you know, sometimes we don't really have an outlet to have those conversations that when we're searching for something, or when we're going through a challenging time. Sometimes we feel like we have to put up this big front that, yes, I've got it all together, and, I'm always happy, and all of those things, and that we're kind of programmed or trained to do. And so to have, or to meet someone, to be able to have a conversation that actually, you get to explore and feel safe to explore. I think that's really the thing. And, no matter how much time it is between our meeting, and whether it is in person or using technology, it always feels like we've just picked up the end of the last conversation.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just been so lovely.
And I'm hoping that that's what we get to capture today. Yeah. So tell me, why shame? Like, when we started talking about like what you wanted to talk about, shame came to the surface, and I've been sort of like not wanting to broach the subject with you, like when we're having personal conversations, because I want it to be here, and so I'm curious, why shame?
Well, it's interesting. Before we started talking about it, you kind of think about the generic things that we could discuss, and how people are coping with things, and I guess what I'm beginning to notice a lot of, whether it's this time that we're living right now or even before, is that there's a great easy leap to shaming. Whether we're shaming somebody else for doing something that we wouldn't do, or shaming ourselves. And that's actually really the big one, is we are very quick to shame ourselves for whatever. And as we were talking, it occurred to me that I had, in the last little while, watched a TED Talk by a woman, and I'm just going to look at my note here. Her name is Dr. Shauna Shapiro, and she's written a beautiful book called Good Morning, I Love You. And I was curious about the book and about what she was talking about, and I think the theme was mindfulness and kindness, and those are two things that are close to my heart. So I watched the video, and throughout this, and she's an exceptional speaker, and I can't recommend the TED Talk enough. Like, she's just lovely. But she put a slide up on the screen, and basically said, this is your brain on shame. And I remember I had to pause it. I had to pause the video, because the visual was, the brain shuts down on shame. We go into fight or flight. And I was even talking about it, I feel kind of, my mouth is dry, but we go into fight or flight, and our brain shuts down. And so we're frightened, and all of the other, emotions that go along with that. And what, in that moment, I realized is that I've known that instinctively, and I had never seen the physiological response. Like, I'd never seen that before. I'd never seen it explained that way. And I realized that in a lot of the work that I do with my clients, a lot of my own personal work, that shame seems to be a thread that goes through a lot of the pain and suffering that we experience. And now that we've had this time to kind of sit still, and for some of us, taking the opportunity to kind of go inward, what does this feel like? We're discovering a lot of stuff about ourselves, parts of ourselves, and some of them are wonderful, and some of them are like, ooh, I don't know if I want to look at that right now. And so when you asked, I thought, wow, what a great opportunity to actually even just shine some light on it, and look at it maybe from a different perspective, or just look at it as what it is. It's an emotion. It's what I feel right now, and it's not going to last, or all of those things that we can say to ourselves. But it's really, I don't know, shame. It's really painful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that, understanding the physiology of it, helps bring it into context for me when I think about it, because when we're in fight or flight, one of our evolutionary adaptations around that is that we hyperfocus, you know, like if you're
Mm-hmm.
running away from a bear, you don't want to be thinking about other things. It's going to be like, I'm running away from a bear. And shame has this way of like, I can see how if you're triggered into that sympathetic nervous system and you're in that space, you hyper focus on the thing that you think is threatening, which is actually your shame. And
Mm-hmm.
so then people go into this like cycle, this loop of like not being able to see anything else outside of whatever they're feeling shameful about.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see how, at least with my clients, part of that is encouraging people to just take a step back and, like you're saying, look at it as an emotion. An emotion is neutral. It doesn't have to be bad or good. It's just as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And bringing them into that parasympathetic state is actually what helps you out of hyper focusing on what you think is the problem, that threat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Part of it too, I think, is that, if we do something and we feel bad about it, we say we feel guilty about it, right? And so typically, if it's an action, we can do something to fix it. We can apologize, we can mend it, we can resolve it, we can do things like that. Somebody can forgive us. When we feel shame, it's more about who we are. And I think that's, we feel not good enough. We feel, my goodness, the things we say to ourselves when we feel ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
How could I? I must be, just fill in the blank there, right? Stupid, wrong, bad. I must be bad. What a bad person I am to even have thought that or done, thought about doing that or any of that. So the action, and guess what? We all make mistakes. We're human. So it's going to happen. That's just the way it is. We can't be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we do something and we then feel, oh, you know what? I can actually fix that. I can apologize, or I can make amends.
Mm-hmm.
I can atone. When we feel shame, or when someone points their finger and says shame on you, we take that as there's something wrong with me. There must be something wrong with me if I've done that. I must not be good enough. And I think that right there, that sentence, I'm not good enough, is one of the themes that goes through most of the clients that I see. If we get really honest with why somebody might come and see me, or any therapy, any wellness practice, is often underneath it all is I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking for a way to get good enough. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to overachieve, or I'm going to overlove. What I mean by that is I'm going to, make myself a doormat so that, I'm going to do things so that you can prove to me that I'm good. Wow, do we do this a swag of things that, and we all do it. Put my hand up, right? We all do things like that. And I think why it's so meaningful to me is when I'm working with somebody and we even begin to talk about the fact that they are already good enough, that they don't have to prove anything to be loved, that they are already good enough. Like I'm looking at their face when we're talking about it, and it's an array of emotions. Often, denial. No, I'm not. I couldn't be. How could I possibly be good enough because I haven't achieved this or done this, or and that's painful too. But the shame part, to me, I think when we begin to just admit that we're imperfect, admit that I may have thoughts that other people might judge as shameful. Okay, doesn't make me a bad person. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Right? To even just say, yeah, all right, yep, I own it, without labeling it.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that guilt comes from a place of I've done something bad, and shame comes from a place of I am bad.
That's
And,
that's
and
how I see it,
mm-hmm,
or what I've experienced, for myself, but also, through the work with people.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So walk me through, like, because I feel like so many of these things come from childhood, like, especially in my work, like I tend to bring people back into that squishy age between ages 0 and 7. Um, our brain waves are operating, I can't remember which exact wavelength it's at, but it's operating in a space where we are so receptive, and we are, Danielle knows what it is. What is it? Beta? Alpha? Beta. Um, Thank you. So we are in this receptive space, and its beta mode is actually the brain wavelength that we're in when we're dreaming. It's and so we're processing so much as little ones between ages 0 and 7. We're in sort of like a dream state in that phase. And those messages that we heard, and they don't always have to be explicit, like you are a bad kid messages. It can be just I'm reading between the lines and I'm trying to figure out how to be loved, and if I mold myself in this way, am I going to get loved? If I mold myself in that way, am I going to get loved? How do I have to be to receive love and attention? And so many of these shame messages I find come from childhood, which I think is so interesting, because hypnotherapy, at least how I've experienced hypnotherapy with you, is like you access that brain wavelength, right? And so there's this deep space where, and I think that there are so many modalities that we can do that accesses that brain wavelength. Is like Reiki is another one, acupuncture is great, all these ways that we as adults shift into beta. And so I'm curious how you work with folks when you can sort of get to the root of their story and hear about what's going on for them, and you're like, oh, that's actually from childhood. Like, what does that conversation look like?
Well, I like to start out by saying it's never about blaming anyone, because I think that our parents did the best they could with what they knew, and they were programmed or trained or set up by their parents who and it goes back and back and back. And that's not to say, I mean, how things are passed on is up for discussion, but you're right. When we are born, we are, pretty much a blank slate. Like, it's like, okay, I don't know. I didn't get the owner's manual. I don't know what's going on. I don't even have words. I don't understand what's, somebody's talking to me. They're tickling me. Okay, that feels good. But so we're this amazing being who is love. Right? We're love. Babies are love. And then we're kind of set into the world to learn. And we're picking up information on so many different levels. And we're creating beliefs about the world, about our role in the world, about, oh, we're observing. Oh, that's how you love. Or, oh, that's how you deal with disappointment. Or, we're watching it all. And we're taking in information that, you're right, we're looking to be loved. We want to be held and protected and fed. And so we will pretty much do whatever we need to do to survive. We are definitely survivors, and to get the love we feel we need. And so we do perform. We all know, I mean, there are parts of us, well, I'm the good girl, or I'm the black sheep, or, this is the only way I could figure out how to get love or attention or whatever it is I thought I needed. And we take those beliefs with us as we grow up, and we love to be right. So then we prove it. See? I told you I was, right? And so it perpetuates, it's repeated, there's consistency. And we're looking now for the proof that this is true. And usually
there's that confirmation bias too, right?
yes.
If you go through the world with that filter of I'm too much or I'm not enough, then you end up confirming those beliefs over and over again.
Yes. And then we're also looking for external words of, oh, gee, you're such a nice person. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Well, I thought I was. And, that's my goal, and right, to be seen that way. So now we're taking it in from external, but if we then have a feeling or an experience where we're not nice, well, there must be something wrong. And God forbid anybody know that part. And especially, I don't even want to look at that part. Meanwhile, we're moving forward. And usually when people come to see me, they've bumped up against something that they have believed for a long time about themselves or about life or whatever. And it just doesn't feel right anymore. And the way I look at it, and I know I'm coming around to answer your question, the way I look at it is that is the moment where we get to decide for ourselves, how do I want to live the rest of my life? What sort of beliefs are actually supportive of what feels good and right for me? So it doesn't make it wrong. Up until that point, it was true, or it felt true, or it got me to this place. And now I've decided, you know what? I've had some life experience. I've talked to other people. I've observed other things. And that doesn't feel right for me anymore for whatever reason. And now I want to find some new ways. So it's not about making it wrong or blaming any of it. It's just saying, okay, that was then. This is now. I can't do anything about what happened in the past. Can't do anything about how I was raised or what was said to me. But I can look at it through different eyes. And that's where, being able to let go of kind of the conscious and say to the subconscious, okay, so what's really going on here? What do I really want to know? What's going to help me feel better? How can I, heal? Those types of questions that aren't logical. And it can help to have someone, whatever caring practitioner it is, to either bounce it off of or say, okay, I've been thinking about this. How does that sound to you? Right?
Yeah.
So we can continue to explore it for ourselves.
Yeah.
So the conversation is always about compassion, always, and about saying, okay, so now that you know, do you want to continue with that, the old belief or the old habit or old pattern? Or do you want to do something else? Do you want another experience? Do you want to feel differently? And how do you want to feel?
Yeah.
So it's like opening a door and saying, okay, so with all of your life experience, what do you want from here on out?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that, because I think a lot of these filters that we have from childhood are unconscious. Like we don't even know that we're going through the world with this filter of I'm too much and I'm not good enough. And I see this too, mostly with my coaching clients, is they bump up against like, oh, that doesn't feel right to me anymore, and I don't know how to see it any other way. Can you help me see it a different way? And I love what you do, which is like you take them back to that beta brainwave and help them reprogram it, right? And
help them do it for themselves.
exactly.
Ultimately, yeah.
Exactly. And I think that that's why I assign journaling practices for my clients, is because you can access that beta state, like when you are in like a journaling, like I'm not even understanding the words that are coming off of the pen. It's just like you can hit that beta wavelength when you're in different spaces, including like hypnotherapy and through journaling. And I think that that's what it's really ultimately about, is how can we bring consciousness and awareness to the filter that we have on our life, and recognizing that we get to choose that filter now as adults at whatever age that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know, I think we get messages. The body tells us, we kind of have a feeling. And when we have time to be still, we really notice. It's often, you know, we're so busy, we're doing stuff. Yeah, I'll get to that later. Oh, I feel that way. Oh, yeah, or that thing hurts. Oh, yeah, I'll get to that later. Oh, no, it doesn't. I'll just power through it. And we shove it over to the side there until we're at a point where we can't ignore it anymore. And, you know, I kind of, the way I describe it to some people is like a 2-year-old trying to get your attention. It's like, pay attention, pay attention. It doesn't go away. But when we turn to it and finally say, okay, what do you need? It could be something simple, like I just need a hug, or I need you to see me. And if we have been holding stuff back or down, if we've been burying things for a long time, they don't go away. But what happens is, I think we start to get frightened of, well, if I let the cap off that, it's going to go right, and and it will never stop. And I think that's what we think. And I know I've been there. It's like, wow, if I take the cork out of the bottle, will it ever stop? Will I ever? Right? And we do, because it's a release.
Yeah.
Right. Then we can look at it. We can look at it. And, you know, we're awesome at looking at happy and love and all of those, and they're wonderful things. Joy, we love to look at joy. We just have kind of been taught, I think we haven't been taught how to look at the dark stuff, or what we've labeled as dark. You know, you avoid the dark, be afraid of the dark, don't look at that. And so we haven't been given tools to just accept, well, that's how I feel sometimes. That's how I feel sad today. Okay. You know, there's a lot of amazing work around grief right now, and we're, you know, feeling a lot of it. And, you know, one of the things is, you know, when dealing with grief, or somebody that you know that is grieving, is don't try to fix it. Let the person be. Let them be. And we have to let ourselves be too. We have to, it's like, it's okay to feel sad sometimes. It's okay to feel those things. And getting back to shame, is usually what we do is we shame ourselves for feeling that way. Oh, I shouldn't feel that way. I need to stop. I need to stop that. Stop feeling jealous. Stop feeling sad. Stop feeling angry. So we deny ourselves the emotion. We make it wrong. and to your point, you know, we're feeling lousy. We're in fight or flight because we're angry about something, and then we make ourselves wrong about feeling angry.
Yeah, it becomes this really hard cycle that it's hard to break out of.
Yes.
Yeah. I think as you're speaking, I'm remembering, I don't know which book of hers it's in, but Brene Brown talks about shame, and the analogy that she makes is like, it's like the Dementors in the Harry Potter series. So, you know, the idea behind the Dementors is it sucks every wonderful thing out of you, and the way to scare the Dementors off is just light. It's just bringing consciousness to that being. And I find that oftentimes that is the antidote to shame, is just looking at it, you know, like just and oftentimes that does require, at least for me, like I need to have an audience for that, like a close friend or a trusted, you know, healthcare practitioner to just like hold that space, so that it doesn't feel like if I take the cork off the cap, like everything is going to come pouring out and my entire life is just going to fall apart. I find that having somebody I trust hold that space for me, and it has to be somebody who understands and knows how to hold that space for themselves, you know, because it can bring on even more shame if you share to somebody who hasn't been able to access that and they try to fix it for you. when really all that needs to happen is like, let's just sit in this together, and I've got you, and we're going to hold it together, and you are not alone in this.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah,
That's the gift right there, right? Is space and acknowledgement and you know, acknowledgement. Yeah, I see you, I hear you, and it's okay to feel that,
mm-hmm.
right? And we often are much better at offering that to someone else. You know, compassion, kindness, space, patience, acceptance, forgiveness, those types of things. We're often, not always, but often far, far better at offering that to another person. And, you know, one of the things I remember, it was just the other day, I was talking to somebody and she said, you know, we'd been having a conversation. She said, you know, when you said, start or begin to speak to myself like I would my best friend or somebody that I care about, I'm changing my language when I'm speaking to myself, especially when I'm hurting.
Mm-hmm.
It takes practice.
Mm-hmm.
Easy, or I'm happy to offer that for somebody else. And so when we begin to, or even consider speaking kindly to ourselves, it feels foreign. Like, well, I don't know. Will I ever, you know, what kind of conversation would that be? And how would I, you know, are you sure? Are you sure that's okay? And, you know, if we think about shame shutting our brain down, compassion and positive reinforcement actually lights it up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we learn. When we feel comfortable, when we feel safe, when we feel joyful, when we feel, I've got this, I'm good, confident, right? We learn with ease. Mm-hmm. And I think that shame is there to help us learn. I think it's there to help us learn something. Mm-hmm. And it might be, you know, to learn how to feel more compassionate with ourselves. It might be, I don't know, you know, I don't know. And it just occurs to me now, but it's a part of us. So when we look at it, there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful opportunity to heal something. It's, you know, it's at that point, and this also is a part of the work that we both do, is how can I reframe this? And what can I begin to say to myself? Or how can I begin to speak to myself that's more kind, or simply accepting, or saying, okay, yeah, that's part of me. All right. Mm-hmm. Because I think part of also what Brene Brown was talking, and she's amazing, boy, is she amazing, is, you know, and I feel this way, I feel like we're putting pieces of ourselves back together. It's like we've been shattered at some point, and we're now finding our pieces and we're putting them together, and we're happy to put in the happy, bright, shiny ones. And then when we discover the dark ones, we're like, oh, I don't know. But that's part of us too. Mm-hmm. And for us to be whole and complete and enough, feeling enough,
it requires all those pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to go back to that juicy little nugget that you dropped, because I think it is something that is important for people to hear, which is shame might actually be teaching us something. Like for me, when you said that, like that clicked in something for myself, because I'll have to do a whole episode about like the 5 element types at some point, but as like a very woody type person, like I like when there is a purpose to an action. Like that helps me feel like there's like all this, I don't know, like to talk about just looking at your shame, like that feels really scary, and like why would I want to do that, and you know, like there's not a whole lot of motivation behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that reframe that you just did for us, which is there is a purpose behind the shame. It is there like a friend, like any other quote unquote negative emotion. It's there as a friend to teach us something. And I think that that's just such a beautiful reframe, and I'm totally stealing it.
By all means. Well, I mean, why, I guess, part of it too is our perception of what we've done that feels shameful, right? Who hasn't been there where we've done something and later we're like, oh my goodness, wow, did I ever? And no one else noticed. But we did something, and maybe someone once said to us, oh, only, if you do that, only bad girls do that, or, only, you want to. So I think initially shame is often used to kind of control us. Well, you wouldn't want to do that because you bring shame to yourself and your family. So don't do that, right? And we're not really sure why. And to your point, when we're interpreting things as little ones, we're interpreting it as a small person. So through our eyes, it must mean that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So avoid that, whatever I've interpreted that situation to be. And it could be something completely innocuous, but to our eyes, it was a big deal. And so we go through our lives in avoiding that. For example, don't be so loud. Or in my case, don't be so sensitive. Stop being so sensitive. So, it's maybe not a shame, but it was considered weak, is how I interpreted it. Oh, I shouldn't be sensitive, or, don't be loud. Just sit over there in the corner and look nice and we'll let you stay. So we interpret these things as small people through our little eyes and make decisions based on that. And so if we're carrying that with us, it's still really young.
Yeah.
It's still really young, and it feels dependent, and it feels kind of sometimes helpless or powerless. It feels powerless. I don't know many 7-year-olds who feel powerful. So, but does that make sense? Like,
it does. And I think to add to that, like what I see and what I experience in myself and what I see in my clients is that when we look at that shame, when we look at that piece that was looking for validation, whether that was I'm going to be a good girl, or this is how I receive love, or this is how I function in the society, this is my beliefs, these are my values. When we work through shame, we no longer rely on external validation to bring us our sense of being, our sense of wholeness. And that is such a beautiful place to see somebody evolve to, because then they get to just fully show up as themselves. And themselves is that version of them that was born into this life despite all the freaking odds it would take for you yourself to be born, and you are loved and you are deserving of being loved the moment you incarnate into this plane. It sort of takes you back to that space before you had conditions placed on you and you were told, how to be in the world. And I think that that's the space from which, like, we get to actually see people's gifts come alive, because all the shoulds just fall apart, right? Like, I hate that word should. As soon as you take all those shoulds and those conditions off, you get to show up and mother the way that you want to mother. You get to show up and be in your career the way that you want to be in your career, even though everyone says like, oh, but this is how you're supposed to do things. You get to be in your family, you get to be in your partnership, your relationship in a way that feels good to you, rather than what other people say it should look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's just such a beautiful space to be able to be in, and really that requires you to look deeply at your shame,
Mm-hmm.
and look at that particular Dementor, and surround it with love, actually.
Well, and forgiveness.
Mm.
Forgiveness. That is one of the most liberating things we can do, is to forgive. And it's not just the words, but it's truly just letting. It doesn't mean that the thing didn't happen. It doesn't mean that we didn't think it. It just means it's okay. Guess what? I'm human. And that part of that, and what you were just saying was just so beautiful and so beautifully put. So, but it is for us to accept ourselves. And maybe that is the lesson for it, or with it, is like, it's easy to love ourselves when things are going well, and when we're happy and in love. It's very, very easy for us to love ourselves then.
Mm-hmm.
And when we bump up against a challenge, or something doesn't work the way we thought or expected it to, or we recognize something in ourselves that maybe is outside of the should designation, well, no, then no, I can't accept that. Or and I think that's where the I'm not enough comes in too, so part of it is just, it's acceptance. And I think there's a great fear that if I allow myself to feel all of that stuff, I'm going to be out of control. And it's actually the opposite. When we stop expecting the external stuff to fill us up and forgive us and give us the stuff that we think we need to be whole. When we, to your point, when we start to love ourselves and say, okay, you know what, here I am,
Mm-hmm.
we start to heal from the inside. And I think that is where that's where the forgiveness and the love, it's that inside.
Mm-hmm.
And we become less dependent on the shoulds and the external and everybody else's opinion about what I'm supposed to do and look like and wear. And
Mm-hmm. And there's so much liberation in that, because then your identity is no longer tied to, your relationship to other people, what your job is, how much money you make, what kind of car you drive, what kind of house you live in. Like, your identity just becomes you and who you are uniquely. And like, there's just, like, you can sense those people out in the world. Like, I think that there's like it's almost like folks who have had a chance to actually sit with that inner child and love that inner child, they've been able to sit with their ego and be like, okay, so I hear that story, and that story is not true, actually. There's a sense of just being with them that feels grounding and comforting.
mm-hmm.
And really, that sense of being is actually just their own sense of being good with their own identity and being good with themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I a few years ago, I did a walk on the Camino, and I discovered my inner princess, who I had been hiding for a long time. I felt ashamed that and how I described her, my inner princess. And when I finally acknowledged her, she became an incredible asset to me. And I know it sounds a bit strange how I'm talking about it, but it was just finally accepting that that was part of me. And it changed the rest of the trip for me. It was like, yeah, okay, I am. And then that's okay.
Yeah, owning that archetype.
Yeah. And for so many years I've been, no, I'm not. And, I could never be. And, and feeling ashamed that she even existed. And, and finally owning her, or just accepting her, taking her in and saying, yep, there you are in all your glory. Felt like, honestly, it felt like a piece of the puzzle started to fit. It's like, oh, okay. So, okay, she is part of me, but so are many, many other things. It's not just that, right? So I sometimes think it's like going from 2-dimension to 3-dimension to 4-dimension. You know, we begin to see ourselves more fully, not just how other people see us or how we think other people see us, but we actually begin to feel and see ourselves more fully and completely.
And that's the beauty of archetype work, is like there are so many parts of us that we deny because we feel shameful about them, or like we just are in denial that they're even there, you know. Like I think that for me, the archetype, and this is going to sound a little extreme, but like the archetype that I was in denial of for so long was the prostitute archetype of like, I'm going to work to make money, and I am going to sell maybe not the best version of myself to make money. And really owning that part of myself has really transformed how I want to show up in the world and how I want to approach my career. And but then I've also, in that process, I've had to think that inner prostitute archetype for actually providing for me, you know. And so that's where the forgiveness piece comes in, is that armor doesn't feel right for me anymore. That cloak doesn't feel right for me anymore. And I'm so thankful that you were there, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to make my rent, put food on the table, you know? And so there is something transformative about looking at these quote unquote shameful parts of ourselves, and actually having gratitude for them, because like you were saying earlier, there was something to learn from that.
To go back to Brene Brown, I mean, she has written some amazing things about, I mean, well, so many, but you know, I think what this sort of conversation does, and I think it's happened for both of us, is it's like, oh, wow, I need to look at that some more, you know. And I think that that's part of the journey anyway, is it's continuous learning. It's figuring things out for ourselves. It's part of what we both do as practitioners, is helping people figure things out for themselves so that they can then, if they choose, do something. And so these types of conversations, and, you know, we talked about it at the beginning, they're just so juicy and so interesting, and so things that we don't normally talk about, right? You know, hushed tones, if at all. And I guess, you know, hope that it sparks other conversations, and that I know I'm going to start reading some more and kind of dig into some things and really just explore it. Because there's, you know, it's getting to know ourselves better.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I think is important to understand too, is it's a constant exploratory process. No, like the way that you and I do it is going to be very different from how somebody else does it. And that's okay too. You know, like we all have to figure out our own way of doing this. And that is what I love about working with clients, is because a lot of times they come up with the answers themselves. And that, I think, is the most powerful work, actually. Is if we can spark some sort of curiosity, and then they come up with their own solution or their own perspective and their own viewpoint, and it's so much better than what I could have come up with them, you know, for them, because they know their own story so much deeper than I know their story. And so they're going to know exactly what feels good, exactly what is going to fit their needs, exactly how they want to show up in the world in a way that's genuine and authentic to them.
I agree 100%. I think sometimes we're just there to spark something, or ask the question. And I mean, we've both seen it, you know, you can see it happening in a person's face when they're like, oh, the light goes on, or it's like, oh, that's why, or wow, I don't have to do that anymore, or I want to do it differently, or whatever. But it's relatable to them because it's their, they know their heart, they know their intention. It's exciting.
Well, speaking of tools, I know that Nicolette, you had a lovely little guided visualization, like a mini guided visualization session that you wanted to share. Do you want to do that now? Does that
Sure.
feel good?
We could totally do that now. And what I would just say is, it's visual. Not everybody is. I happen to not be very visual, but what I'm going to do is offer. It's about 10 minutes, and if you're listening, you can find a comfortable spot and close your eyes if you like. And because it's guided, you can just let go. We're already pretty relaxed, I think, most of us, and we did that beautiful breath work at the beginning. So the intention of this visualization is to offer some perspective for our lives, looking at things from a slightly different viewpoint, and taking the learning that we all have in our lives and from our lives' experiences to move forward to creating a future that we want.
I'm going to just pause this episode just for a moment because Nicolette is about to share a lovely guided visualization. And so if you're listening to this episode while you are out and about, I recommend that you pause here. If you have the ability to go find a quiet space to sit, get grounded, or to lie down, I would do so now. And if you're driving, please hit pause and listen to this later when you have about 10 minutes to devote to a guided visualization. I hope you enjoy. I loved this one.
Okay, we'll begin. So if everybody's relaxed, eyes are closed. Let's just take a nice deep breath in. And exhale, relaxing the jaw. Nice deep breath in. Exhaling, relaxing your shoulders. One more breath in. Exhale, relax the belly. Inhale. Exhale, relax your hips. And imagine for a moment that you are walking in a beautiful place of nature. It's a lovely day, summer, sunshine, gentle breeze. And as you walk, you're on a pathway. You look ahead and the pathway leads up a hill. All around you, green, healthy, abundant nature. And at times as you're walking along this path, you stop to rest, to look at things, to replenish yourself. Maybe you even sit down in the shade. You keep moving along. And as you do, you notice the things all around you. You see things more clearly. You hear sounds, maybe colors are more vivid. You hear birds and bees, the breeze rustling through leaves on trees. You see the grass gently bending. And you just keep moving along this pathway, and you look up at certain points. So you imagine you look up, and now you see above you a big, beautiful tree, the branches of a tree. And they're swaying gracefully above you, these branches. Further up, as you look through the branches, you see blue. You see the blue sky. Big, beautiful blue sky above you. And you breathe deeply this clean, fresh air. As you breathe, standing in this place, you feel more connected, more and more connected to this space. You continue looking around, and now you see more detail. Colors become richer. You see texture and shapes. Maybe as you look down now, you see small wildflowers, white and pink and purple. And as you stand in this space, you hear and feel the stillness, the quiet. Maybe you even hear your own heartbeat. It's so quiet here. You feel a sense of belonging, and you recognize this place right here. It feels like you're inside it, and it's inside of you. It's sacred to you, this place. You feel even more at peace, more calm, more relaxed. You notice the rhythm of your breath, of your heartbeat. This pathway, it continues up a hill, and you begin to climb. There may be moments where you slow down. That's okay. Take as much time as you want or need. Rest if you wish. And continue. When you're ready, placing one foot in front of the next, continuing this climb. Way ahead of you is a hilltop. And at the top of this hill is a gateway. You're curious about it, and you walk towards this gateway. As you get closer and closer to it, you see more and more detail. You notice the shape, the color, the size, what it's made out of. Maybe it's a hedge, maybe it's a stone wall, and this gateway is open. And the closer you get, the more detail you notice, until you're standing right in front of it, an arm's length away. And you know that in front of you, this amazing life awaits. There's light. Your entire life in front of you. You turn 180 degrees. You turn to look behind you and below you. You pause and review the past events in your life, all of the things that are behind you. You look and you see all of the learning, all of the joy, all of the victories, the successes, the achievements, the love, and yes, the missteps, or what you thought were missteps at the time, sorrow, disappointment. You see all of the moments you felt connected, purposeful, belonging, content, confident, peaceful. You observe it all of it, every step. All of that has brought you to this place. So you observe it as it is, events, moments, everything that brought you to this place, that brought you to this moment. So you observe it all and you send it a blessing, sense of gratitude, a sense of acceptance. Bless it all. And then let it all go. Release it. For it is in the past, all of it. Let it all go, all of it. It is in the letting go of the past that you reclaim your power. And when you feel ready, turn back towards the gateway and step through the gateway now and into your amazing, bright future, knowing that you have the resources, the experience. You have everything you need to handle whatever arises, and remembering that this place is here, is yours, it's sacred to you, your pathway. Move forward into your future, knowing you have everything you need. And so be it. And when you feel ready, nice breath. Thank yourself for giving yourself a few moments to just be. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes, maybe stretch, roll your shoulders, smile.
Thank you so much, Nicolette.
You're welcome.
That was beautiful. I always love sinking into a guided visualization with you.
It's my pleasure. I get to go too, you know.
It's true. So before we log off, how can people find you, my dear?
Well, I have a website, which is my full name, NicoletteHypnotherapy.com. People can always email me. I have a Gmail account, which is NicoletteUse@gmail.com. And, you know, on the website, I have a blog. I use Twitter. I'm not on Facebook on purpose, but I do have a Twitter account, and just it's only ever things that I feel will assist people. So it's not political or personal. It's actually just, you know, information that I feel might help somebody feel better, or that is informational. So but I'm in Vancouver. I've got a practice here, but I've also through the last 2 months have honed my online practice, which has also been quite lovely. So, but thank you for asking.
Yeah. And I'll make sure to put all those in the show notes so that there's easy links for people to find.
Okay.
And I also just wanted to share that I made a really big decision recently to leave my acupuncture clinic that I've been working at for the last 3 years. And before I made that decision, Nicolette, you made me this beautiful personalized guided visualization. It was like 15 minutes long, I think, and it just helped me sink into my own inner knowing and just trusting my soul and my body more than my mind, because my mind wants to be logical and make choices from logical spaces rather than from a place where, like, I know that that's not the right place for me, and this is. And it's something that I still listen to today.
Yeah, how lovely.
And I don't know if you offer those personalized guided visualizations, but I think that would be a lovely thing to share with people.
I do. Well, thank you. They're, yes, I do. And it's, they're all very personal. So they do take a little bit of time to create.
Mm-hmm.
I have a series, as you know, a series of questions, but it's, yeah, I love to do it in person, like when I'm with a person in a session. And it's kind of came as well from these last 2 months, a sense of how can I continue to help people, but if they aren't able to come in or have a session, but something that I can offer, and I do love to do them. And yeah,
I love that it's just like a tool now in my toolbox of like, okay, so I'm not feeling super grounded today, like I'm gonna throw on a guided visualization and like lie in the grass and just hang out in the grass for 15 minutes with Nicolette. So that's been a good little tool for me.
Well, thanks for taking me along.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. This was such a lovely conversation to sink in with you today, and I appreciate you being here, and I will hopefully see you next week.
Thank you so much. Yeah. This was really great.
Yeah.
Bye.